Well, hi everybody. Welcome to the fish room again. Today I'm going to talk a bit about my experience with some tungsten weights versus standard brass or lead lure bodies. So it's a lure making episode and it's about some efficiencies that I've found with the tungsten material. So if you're unaware of it, tungsten is a far denser metal than lead or brass. And so for the same size dimensions, tungsten is quite a bit heavier. This comes in handy if I want to weight smaller bladed lures so that they can get down to depths where the trout are more likely to be, particularly this time of year. You're not going to find many trout in short riffs or runs. They're going to be at the bottom end of pools. They're going to be in the very bottom of pools at times. Trout will hit any size spinner. I know you've heard me say this many times that I use a very large spinner, and I've gotten questions about that. And I do use a very large spinner from probably March, April on. I'll be using a ½ ounce or bigger spinner. But this time of year, the trout can be somewhat suspect to hit that larger lure. And it's a simple equation. The trout has to determine how much of its energy is going to be worth catching any prey. And so in the colder temperatures, because fish are cold-blooded, they're not going to run after something that they think they're going to have to work more hard to capture, or that they think possibly could get away. They want the easy feed, and they do have to eat every single day, even in January. We'll go ahead and we'll take a look at some of the tungsten weights that I purchased. Tungsten also has a positive environmental effect in that it's not lead. So the lead poisoning issue that you may have seen on fishing products that you purchase that are lead, being cancer-causing and hazardous to the environment. It's a consideration. Certainly there are things where the best tool is what I use, and considering the minor impact that even lead weights can have in our streams, I'm not so sure that environmentally is the best argument to take for the use of tungsten, but I think it can do some exciting things for trout fishing with smaller bladed lures. So we'll go ahead and take a look at that, and I'll just get the camera reset. Okay, so what I've done here is I've set up a couple of comparisons so that you can see the difference in the weight of tungsten versus some of the other lure bodies that I use, and then I'll take some total weights of the setups so you can get the idea of what the effect is for using them during fishing. So over here we have the tungsten weights, and you can see they're pretty small, and you might be astonished, as I was, to see that those are 0.4 ounce weights. So just at about 3/8 ounce. And that's what they were advertised for when I purchased them. Unfortunately, the tungsten is quite a bit more expensive. It's about 3 times as much as lead or brass, for that matter. But to give you an idea, that tungsten weight at 0.4, it's nearly the same size there, and the other lure weighs 0.15. Almost the exact same profile lure body is half the weight. So that gives you an idea of what the properties of the tungsten are. So again, we're talking a 0.4 for the tungsten and a 0.2 for that lead. This is actually one that's off a stock Panther Martin. In fact, you can see the Panther Martin stamped 6 on there. So moving forward, if we take a look at one of these brass ones that I've been using on size 6 lures. You can see that lure here. These are the lures that are using that Panther Martin size 6, the tungsten one, the brass one, and then another tungsten one. But that size piece of brass is 0.2 ounces. And so again, we've already looked at this, but you can see for a smaller profile body, in thickness almost, the tungsten is double the weight of the brass. And so what does that do? Well, I've mentioned that I like to throw smaller lures in the beginning of the season. Here's a 6, right? Nice, working well. That entire lure with the hook, the blade, the bead, everything weighs 1/4 ounce. Okay. The tungsten one, a similar make, which has the heavier tungsten weight, the hook, the blade, the beads, is coming through at 0.45. So this lure is going to drop in the water column. The tungsten lure is going to drop in the water column and get to the bottom much faster. And it affects it throughout the entire process of trout fishing. When it hits the water after the cast, it's going to sink, well, I would guess almost twice as fast based on the flow of the water or hydrodynamics that occur. But this dense, heavier lure is going to impede the resistance of the water to a fuller force of gravity, and it's going to sink faster. And when reeling at the same reel speed, it's going to sink lower. In fact, this lure will get into holes that this lure never would reach, just by virtue of the mass. So you get the idea here. I'm not going to painstakingly explain every single weight, but it does continue to have effects even with the larger lures. So as I move up to something that's a size 9, this is the typical body I would use for a size 9. Again, 1/4 ounce body. And we know that the tungsten body is 3/8 or 0.4 ounces. So again, it's not quite double, but look at the size difference in these. That's what enables me to stick this lure into a 6 or a 9 blade and still have the presentation and design of the lure that I want. I think I could even fit these under a 4 blade. I just think that even already with the cold polar vortex, I think we're past 2s and 4s. I hate using them because they're so difficult to cast because they're so light, but one of these tungsten weights on a size 4 is going to have much more castability, and it's going to sink into holes that, you know, when you're throwing a 2 or a 0 or a 4, reeling alone, they probably don't sink less than 6 to 10 inches unless you just let them fall down to the bottom. And even in the case of the smaller lures, they don't fall quickly. A 4, or with that tungsten weight, would drop like a rock. So you have the idea here. There are times when I do want to use a lighter lure, so I'm not saying I'm switching all of my lure making to tungsten, but this is a body that I use on this number, 9 right here. And what I like about this is if I'm in a very shallow spot, if all I'm doing is fishing really small streams or shallow streams, I will go ahead and use that lure because I want the lure then to be higher in the water column. So fish will hit smaller spinners if you can get them in front of their face, and the heavier tungsten weight I think will work for the smaller blades on streams where I want to fish that way. But let's take a look at a couple of the comparisons then. So here is a tungsten lure with a MEPS style blade, a hook, bead, and a tail. That lure at size 9 is weighing out to 0.55 with the tungsten, so just over a 1/2 ounce. A similar lure, with a body and no tail, but still the same blade, comes out at 0.3. So you see I'm gaining, again, 40% heavier lure, which is going to aid me in the fishing situations I've been discussing. And let's take a look just for giggles. Here's one with a Panther Martin type of blade and tail and hook, and that comes out at 0.5, so that's a little lighter than the other setup that I had with the bigger, with the other blade and a clevis. But that 0.5 exactly, this is the normal weight of my sometimes size 15 and 18 lures. And when we compare it to a similar Panther Martin with the very light body, that lure comes out to 0.2. So that one is more than 100% heavier than this one. And the last example is more comparable pieces too. This is the Tungsten with a MEP style blade and beads, hook and a tail, coming out at 0.55. And when I add again a 9, very similar build, but just without a tail, 0.25. So again, double the entire lure is double the weight for the same exact blade size. And that's the variability that I want to have with tungsten. So what do we know about the bodies already? Well, this is one of those bullet bodies that I use on size 15 and 18 lures. It's 0.4. The tungsten, as we know already, is 0.4. So again, look at the contrast in the size of these lure bodies. This one is so much, the tungsten one is so much smaller that it enables the same weight is just a property of mass. It's the density difference between tungsten and what is brass. Okay, so moving on to then what are the differences in the lure constructions. Here's a nice 15 beaded lure with a tail and a hook. That lure comes out at 0.65. The same nearly exact lure with the tungsten body was shorter. You saw the size difference. So I was able to add that Attractant bead, which I really like. I do that on smaller size lures, and this now has afforded me the ability to fit an Attractant bead and still have the lure and the blade made exactly how I like them. When I have a blade that comes down on a spinner, I like it to end as close to the end of whatever the body is. Not the ring, but the body. I think that makes for the best action on these types of spinners. And so again, the tungsten one weighs 0.60. So I've been able to keep it very, very close in weight. And that makes sense because the bodies are exactly the same. But the difference is I get to add another piece of Attractant that wouldn't fit under this. It would be way oversized. If I put that big bead on this one, the body would be elevated and there'd be this space. And I don't care to make the spinners like that. I think it affects the rotation and spin of them, and I think will be effective. So here's one in gold that has the tungsten, and again I've been able to put this red bead in there, hook and a tail, and it weighs out at 0.6. And I think we saw from the previous one that the bullet weight's going to come out around the same or a little heavier. But you get the idea here. It just gives, so 0.6, so same, and it was rounding a little bit there. The scale's not terribly exact, but these are the same exact size lures. So in addition to being the same weight, this one's going to make a lot more splash in the water when casting than this smoother body, smaller body. So I'm excited about using these. and I'm going to introduce some of them, and I'll make sure I announce when I'm using them in my videos. But I'm really excited about using the heavier tungsten, denser tungsten, in small lure setups. So hopefully this is something you're interested in. Well, I hope that that was at least something that you're interested in, given that there's no fishing going on today. I was out scouting, and I have some video of that scouting, showing some water temperatures, some of the conditions. I did find quite a bit of bank ice and cooler water temperatures in the 33-34 degree range. And I did come across one spot that was a little bit better temperature, but really was not interested in just getting in to be able to pick off a couple fish from a specific hole where I know they're there, trying to have some solace when this winter is going to be pretty darn strong here. Polar vortex is bringing apparently -0 highs for us all next week. There was some talk of a warm-up on Super Bowl weekend, so I'll have the DVR on. If there's fishing weather, I'll be out, and check out my next video. So thanks for watching from Wisconsin Trout Fishing, and happy fishing. Okay, so not really sure if I'm going to fish today yet, but figured I would try and get some temps. And this water is open. Oh, not a lot though. Not a lot at all. Actually, it's pretty frozen. It's open in spots would be the more accurate portrayal. Let's see what the temp is. Okay, so that water is 34.2. That's actually warmer than I thought it was going to be. That means it's going to warm up a little bit. Some of this ice is going to go away from the conductive effect of that water. Let's see if it's any different right here. There's some birds out there. Okay, there's a new temp. 33.6. So it is colder on this side. A little shallower water running into this run. 33.6. That's not good. I don't know that this is going to be worth it. I'll try a couple more spots just to see what it looks like. And so this is a little trib, which I think probably has a bit more spring input, but it was real low. No, it's more frozen. So when I looked at this the day before yesterday, I think it was completely open. So 120 degree day, and the groundwater had enough energy to warm up a little bit. But here, oh, this looks, yeah, this is futile. But I was interested because there's a USGS sticker on this pole here, and I don't really recall seeing this before. I don't exactly have my boots on here. So this says USGS for a changing world. It says crest stage gauging station. So this is new.
National Network for obtaining the high water mark recorded by the gauge and to use in operations for water rights claims, projects, culverts, interstate culverts, flood forecasting, monitoring. So that is new. That has not been here. I don't ever recall seeing that before over the last 7 years, so that's kind of interesting. Oh, come back here, you go. Alright, well, I'm not even going to bother with the temp here. My thermometer is picking up air temperature of 15.1, which is actually a little warmer than it was supposed to be forecast for. The light wind out of the northwest, which is kind of strange. But I think trout fishing shut down for the next week. After today, we're supposed to hit only sub-zero temperatures for highs. Yeah, this hole usually has some trout in it and it's completely frozen. But, oh well. I might check one more spot. Okay, I'll take one more look here. The automobile's gotten up to a balmy 60 degrees. That's gonna change, folks. And I don't always fish these same exact spots that I test, but these are the ones that are the easiest for me to get to in this type of weather. Oh, and see, now this looks nice and open. This looks like it could be fished. Get a temp here in the shallows, but this doesn't have near the ice of the other stream. I am very, very close though to a spring input here. "37 degrees is what that water says right there. "37. See, so now that's fishable. Oh, the dilemmas of Wisconsin trout fishing, folks, I tell you, it's ridiculous. So here, and sure enough, there's a big pile of trout right down there. And they are loving this part of the stream. Ooh, there is a nice one right there. And I'm not gonna pick on these specific places. I don't think that's very fair. There's a bunch of little ones, but there is a super couple of nice, at least 16. Maybe that one's even bigger right there, zooming around. Pretty amazing. They see me. So when you talk about spooking trout, remember they have peripheral vision that far exceeds. Oh, that is a nice one right there. Wow. That's incredible. We'll see, but I'm guessing this water might even be a little warmer, but certainly that's a nice little hole right there. There's at least 25 trout right there. But I'm not going to pick apart this spot. I'm not going to come here and drop a lure on these fish in the middle of, at the end of January, when this is likely one of the few sanctuaries they have in this area. I mean, it'd just be dumb. Just be dumb to do. Yeah, 39.9. That's pretty amazing. So what I might do, so in this section here, the spring is maybe just a little bit past that barn. And if it's not frozen beyond that, which it might be frozen hard as a rock, and I guess it is, but it could be 39.9. Wow. It could be that trout have moved into all of this warmer water versus being downstream and in some colder stuff. We'll see. It's either that or go do my weekly grocery shopping, which I can guess which I would prefer. But anyhow, we'll see what happens. Okay. So, this is the top end, the next bridge on that spring run. And you can see, yeah. So, I think this means no fishing today. I'm not gonna pick off fish in one little solace hole that they have. I'm just not gonna do that. And this water obviously does not have the spring input, and that's why it's frozen. So more of a long drainage of accumulated water from uphill, upstream. So, well, yeah, I don't think that there's much point here today. We'll see. I still might try